Natural Habitat Adventures is pleased to be bringing you this presentation today, Tracking Gorillas in the Wild, Congo's Rainforest. And we're here today with Kim Nixon, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about Kim before I turn it over to him. Kim's passion for nature began during his childhood schooling and continued throughout his education. He studied nature conservation specifically to understand ecosystem functioning, and then began guided, specialized, scheduled, and tailor-made safaris throughout the national parks and private concessions of Botswana and Namibia. Kim then joined Wilderness Safaris, which is an Africa-based luxury ecotourism company, where his role expanded into developing and managing trade relationships for African travel specialists in North America. He has worked with Natural Habitat Adventures for over 10 years at his role at Wilderness Safaris, and his enduring belief is that ecotourism in Africa helps to drive cooperation, conservation practices, linking governments, communities, and the private sector to benefit all. He is currently based in Cape Town, South Africa, at the office of Wilderness Safaris, and that's where he's joining us from today. And I know it's quite late in the evening for Kim, so we're just delighted that he stayed up for us. Hi, Kim. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It is amazing how many coffees are required to keep one awake at this time of the night.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. I know you've got a great presentation, so I'll let you get started.
Thanks very much, and thank you very much for the introduction. I look forward to sharing what, for me, has been a revelation of a new product. And it's in a very small little country called the Republic of Congo. I call it the small Congo, or the one of the small Switzerland of Africa's. And what I'm going to do is to take you through a presentation which is going to try and explain to you how unique the system is in terms of the habitats, how wonderful the variety is of wilderness that you have in these areas, and how incredible the wildlife is that one has the opportunity to encounter in these areas while you're traveling on the safari. So without further ado, I'm actually just going to go straight into the presentation itself, and then we will divulge and go through details as we go. So we're looking at a national park called the Odzala-Kikuyu National Park. It's in the Congo Basin, which is one of the largest tropical forest rain basins, and is actually only second to the Amazon, and is as such one of the largest land-based tropical wilderness areas in the world today. So we're looking at the map of Africa over here, and the Republic of Congo is on the western side of Africa. It is bordered on the west by Gabon. It is bordered on the right by the Democratic Republic of Congo. And where Odzala is located is actually very close to the Republic of Congo border, very close to the Gabonese border in the west of the country. And the beauty about this is that it is actually nowhere near the Democratic Republic of Congo, where some problems actually are politically on the eastern side of the country. So looking at the Republic of Congo a little bit more closely, and to give you a very brief introduction to the country, this is a multi-party democracy. It has a bicameral type of government. It has a very low population base of around about 3 million people odd. And it is surprisingly having a population density in the region of about 70% of the population located in the two major cities, those being in the very south, Brazzaville, and the second major city being Pointe-Noire, which is on the coast, on the Atlantic coastline. The Odzala-Kikuyu National Park is actually up in the north of the country, and it is in the order of around about 7,000 odd square miles. It is actually part of a trans-frontier national park, which is shared with Cameroon to the north as well as Gabon to the west, and in itself, therefore, is actually part of a greater conservation area of almost 12,000 square miles. Now, if you consider the size of this in terms of conservation importance, it is just epic. for Central West Africa. The flight from Brazzaville up to the Adzala-Kikuyu National Park is in the order of about 480 miles and takes around about 2 hours to fly. So some of the photographs that I'm going to show you are actually my own personal photographs. I've guided for more than 12 years in southern Africa, and I was dead keen to get up into the Congo so that I could see how different this area was. But unfortunately, some of the images that I took were outside of out of an aeroplane. What you're seeing here is what you witness when you actually land in Brazzaville, the capital of the Republic of Congo, and it is the Congo River. Now, this river is so wide that I could not see the other side of it at certain places. It is one of the largest volumes, in fact it is the largest volume of water flowing in any river at any one time per second on its way to the ocean. And Brazzaville is actually located right on the edge of this magnificent river. There are a number of hotels in town where people are happy to stay. But the one that we would recommend, and the one that would be supported jointly by Natural Habitat and Wilderness Safaris, is the Michael's Hotel. It's a very well-appointed hotel. It has very comfortable rooms. It has an a la carte menu. It is very well air-conditioned. But the feel of Brazzaville itself is actually quite phenomenal. And it is very convivial, very relaxed, not at all inundated with tourists. And as a result, one never gets harassed or haggled. So I took a group of folk through with me over here, and actually the lady on the right-hand side of the image is Susanna Spencer, who is one of the specialists working at Natural Habitat, so she knows personally about this trip. And we went to this wonderful market called the Poto Market, and it is the place where one can find some of the most incredible Dutch African wax cotton fabric, which is where a lot of the flamboyant dresses come from and shirts come from West Africa. And quite amazingly, right next door to the cotton sellers are the people, the tailors, and you can have a shirt or a dress made up after your safari. You can collect it and be on your way again. So that was quite a nice, funky, fun little thing that we did over there. The other amazing thing is that because it has a French history to it, you have these amazing guides, and this guy over here was actually just a folk who was a person that was making baguettes, and you could choose whatever you wanted in your baguettes, and there was a coffee seller, and there was a roast chicken seller, and all of these little baguettes were made for you right there and then, and they were incredibly fresh. So it was a very interesting stay in this wonderful little capital city. So just to reiterate, down in the south is where we start at Brazzaville. From there, the flight up to the Adzala-Kikuyu National Park is around about a 2-hour aircraft transfer. We do that transfer in a high-wing aircraft called a Cessna Caravan, and we land at an area called the Nzehi area, which I will show you in a minute. The drive between the two camps is a 3-hour nature drive. It drives through the national park and out of the national park. To put it into perspective for you, we are the only commercial operators working within this national park, so in effect there are 7,000 square miles private for 12 guests at any one time. This is the Cessna Grand Caravan that I'm talking about. The beauty about this aircraft and why we like to use it is because it is a high-wing aircraft, so your view is pretty incredible as you're flying up. And this is pretty much what that view looks like. It's another one of those poor photographs of mine, but to try and give you an idea about this, each of these trees are in the region of around about 30 to about 55 feet in height. And in the top right of the image over there, where the vegetation thins out, the only reason that's gotten thin like that is because there's the river flowing underneath there. And every available piece of light is taken up by growing vegetation. Now this is the view directly down from the aircraft, around about 3,000 feet up. And what you would do is you would lift your eyes up to the horizon in front of you. You can lift your eyes to the horizon out to the left and to the right. And as far as the eye can see, this is what you see. it is without a doubt one of the greatest lungs of our planet. And it was just breathtaking and mesmerizing to actually realize that you were in such an incredible, pristine, pure wilderness area. This is looking at it a little bit more closely as we were coming into land, and you can just see how densely packed these trees are. They're actually so dense in places in what is known as the terra firma forest, firm ground forest, that there are 3 canopies of leaves. And there's different ecosystems and habitats within each of those canopies as a result of the light. So we land at Lango, and this is where our airstrip is located. When we are at Lango, we will meet our guide, and we will then drive across to the first camp, which is called Ngaga Camp. Now, Ngaga Camp is where the habituated gorilla are found, and it is in that terra firma forest, that firm ground forest that I was talking about a second ago. The drive is about a 3-hour nature drive. The roads are typical, pristine, pure wilderness area roads, and they can be quite bumpy, but it is an incredible experience. And as you depart from the airstrip, you get into the thicker and thicker vegetation as you go. Eventually, you come across little signs like this, which will warn you of wild gorilla, which would be crossing the roads. The group that I was traveling with, we actually had 2 wild sightings of gorilla that darted across the road. We had a big silverback gorilla slide down a tree as well and dart off into the forest. And you get more and more excited as you get closer and closer to camp. Just in terms of the camps itself, there are 2 camps. Ngaga is the first camp that we go to. It has 6 tents. It's a very small and intimate tented camp. The key experiences in this area are focused on obviously the gorilla, the habituated gorilla experience, accompanied by researchers and trackers. And then Lango camp is the forest safari aspect of the Odzala experience. And the key experiences here are the savanna areas, the river Iran areas, and then obviously the Bai areas or the saline clearings, which I will point out to you why they're such an important experience within this rainforest. So just to give you a perspective of what the camps look like before we go into the actual experience itself, this is what Lango camp looks like from the air. It has the main area on the left of the image over there with a bar and a dining room and the fire deck in the front. It actually looks out onto one of those saline clearings, and that area is called a Bai. So wonderful scenery in a salty environment, which the animals love. Outside of the camp, outside of the main area, there are 3 rooms radiating out on each side, and all of them command a wonderful view out onto this saline clearing. That's just looking at it from a different angle again. That was folk coming back from a walk. This is looking at the main area at Ngaga camp from the outside, and these are what the main areas look like inside. So a very typical Congolese construction, which are arched timbers covered in a raffia palm covering, as open as possible because you like to have that airflow. And incidentally, the humidity in this area is very low in comparison to what we had actually expected, and I would say it would be in the order of about 50 to 55%. So not nearly as bad as Florida. This is the walkway to the rooms. The rooms are constructed in a very similar construction to the main area as well, and they are incredibly comfortable, as you can see from this image over here. Mosquito nets, fans in the rooms, wonderful through flow of air. The bathroom is at the back, as well as the vanity, which is right next to where the lights are. Odzala has a lot of quiet, hidden little experiences. This is a little platform on a tiny little river, and it's a surprise platform where we set up snacks and drinks for guests. Literally after you've done a forest walk, you would come around a corner, and there the guests would be surprised by this amazing spread of food, drinks, and on this quiet little river just flowing through this pristine African rainforest. The food, believe it or not, none of that food comes from the Republic of Congo because they don't really produce any food itself. We amazingly have everything imported from either South Africa or from France directly. And that simply is as a result of the French history that they have. And the majority would come from France. So very, very good foods, very good cheeses, very good meats, very good breads, and obviously pastries, and then obviously the vegetables as well are exquisite. So let's look a little bit at the habitat here, and this is where it starts to get interesting. The first camp, which is in Gaga camp where we stay, is in the bottom left-hand corner over here where the habituated gorilla tracking takes place. This is, as you can see, surrounded by permanent rainforest. To the right of the image in the Lango area, which is where savanna and river safari is actually written, you can see the gray over there, and that's grassland, which is amazingly maintained by lightning, believe it or not, and it's surrounded by rivers as well as forests as well, so it's a perfect place for this forest safari. So starting with Ngaga, this is what it looks like from the air. The first thing that struck me was actually how lowland the habitat was and how gentle and undulating it is. So for the older guests, it's actually really amazing because you can walk around reasonably comfortably, and unlike in Rwanda and Uganda where you have to go up and down quite steep environments to see mountain gorilla, here you walk on reasonably flat environment to actually view western lowland gorilla. These two wonderful people over here are the researchers of the gorilla itself. The lady on the left over there is a lady by the name of Magda. Magda is, in my personal opinion, probably the world's foremost behavioral expert on western lowland gorillas. She is the only scientist that has been able to habituate western lowland gorillas. It was touted to be impossible, and so she has actually managed to habituate, believe it or not, nearly 7 families so far, of which we have access to 2 families. The gentleman on the right there is actually an ex-poacher, and amazingly, poachers are the best trackers, and these guys are the swiftest trackers in all of Africa. They track at around about 400 to 500 feet per hour, which is incredibly swift, and is very, very efficient at finding the gorillas. The other difference with this experience is that we actually walk on pre-cut pathways into the forest. There's a 4-mile by 4-mile square radius of pathways cut through the forest. We have 2 habituated families of gorilla that we go and visit. And the way that a day works is that you will get up at the crack of dawn at around about 5 o'clock in the morning. We'll head out at around about 5:30 in the morning. You'll take a little backpack with a little water. You'll take a little nest net for your face, and you'll head out in search of the gorilla. What the trackers would have done the night previously is they will stay with the gorilla until actually they go down to nest. So we'll know where they nested the night before. And we leave early in the morning because these gorilla wake up a little bit later, and we head up to exactly where the nest site is so that we can more or less track the gorilla quite quickly and find them quite easily. We have a 100% success rate when it comes to viewing the gorilla. So your guides travel with you for the 6 nights. This is one of the guides up there. His name is Carl, and he would be leading the expedition from start to finish. The walks actually never take more than 4 guests at a time maximum to go and view the gorilla. So with 2 families, there would be 2 groups going out to go and view the gorilla at any one time. As you can see, the pathways are quite easy to walk around on. This vegetation that you see crowding around the heads of the people over here is actually the main food type of the western lowland gorillas. This is called Marantassi. It's actually a relative of the ginger plant, and the gorilla love to feed on the leaves. They love to feed on the root tubers as well. And the forest floor in this permanent rainforest, in this terra firma forest, is wonderful for sighting these gorillas. I put this photograph in here to show you that when we do find the gorillas, we do ask guests to put on a little bit of a mouth mask, and the reason for that is because communicable diseases can easily be transmitted to these primates. They share over 95% of the genetic makeup of what humans are, and so our diseases are transmittable. but it's pretty incredible. This is one of the photographs that I took of one of the silverback males. This guy was, his name is Neptuno. He is absolutely massive. The size of his shoulder is probably 2 or 3 times the size of my thigh. And when we arrived, we saw him hanging out of a tree with one arm eating on this enormous fruit. And then when he dropped that fruit and looked for another fruit, he pulled this enormous bulk upward with one arm and grabbed another piece of fruit out of a tree. So it's just an enormously powerful animal. And you can see that there's not even one single hair out of place over here. The ladies groom him perfectly every day. The other thing about these animals is that they have much shorter hair than what the mountain gorillas have. They also have got very, very different behavior. You know, unlike the mountain gorilla, which are, in my view, quite sedentary and sit on the ground quite often, these guys are up the trees, they're down the trees, they're digging in the ground, they're socializing, they're moving, they're much more active. So it's quite a busy experience. We spend a maximum of an hour viewing the gorilla on each of the days that we go out. So there are 2 gorilla viewings per group. And these are just some of the images that are possible when you're viewing the animals. Some of the differences with this animal relative to the mountain gorilla, as you can see, for those who have been to Uganda, these are gorilla that have much shorter hair, that are around about 5% smaller than what the gorillas are, what the mountain gorillas are. But let me assure you that they are no less impressive in bulk and size. These are all pretty typical photographs that you can expect to see in the area. What I loved about the experience was the night before, Magda, the scientist, sat down with us and spoke with each of the groups as to which of the families you were going to visit. And when you were on your way out to go and view these families, you actually had an understanding of the individual behavior of each of the gorillas that you were going to see. So this female over here, I can tell you, is the lead female. That is the lead female of Neptuno's group, and she was quite a cantankerous old lady, and she didn't really appreciate our presence. So she sat in the tree and glared at us for the first 15 minutes while we were there, but everybody else seemed to be completely relaxed, as you can see by these photographs here. So the 2 experiences that we had were absolutely life-changing for me. It gave me an insight into a species that I had otherwise not known before. It also exposed me to an incredible forest, which showed me a range of vegetation that I'd never seen before either. I wish I could tell you the name of the tree on the right-hand side over here, but I can't even do that because there are just so many hundreds of trees. But let me just say that the size of one of those thorns is more or less the size of your thumb. The flowers, they are huge, huge flowers. This flower is probably the size of an average laptop computer. Look at that one over there. Spectacular diversity of life. So after we've spent 3 nights at the Ngaga camp, we then jump back on our vehicle and we head back on a 3-hour nature drive back to Lango camp, which is where we have the forest safari. Now, the drive that we do back is diversified in that we actually make a stop at the village. And the village is a wonderful experience which exposes people to the culture of the people in the area. It exposes you to the actual Baka Pygmy tribe, which are a very small African forest-dwelling tribe of Central West Africa. You can see the vehicle that we drive in here is a Toyota Land Cruiser. It is a very comfortable vehicle and a very robust vehicle at the same time. So back on that road that we traveled in on, and eventually you come out at what is known as the Invoker Village. This is the Invoker Village over here. You can immediately see how short the lady is in the background over there. That is the Baka Pygmy. They're extremely friendly people. They really are very pretty people as well, and they really do enjoy spending time with our guests. Many people here live in a very traditional way. So outside of the national parks, you still have people engaged in subsistence farming as well as subsistence hunter-gatherer type scenarios, and these are actually forest hunters that were out going out into the forest to see if they could get some dinner. We also spent some time in the markets itself, spent a lot of time with the people and the children, see what it is that they're selling, and actually just spend a little bit of time. The lady over there on the left is wearing one of those cotton dresses that I was telling you about that we went and shopped for. After we spent time in the village, we then head off into Lango, and this is the set of photographs I'm going to show you now is actually a series of habitats, and this first photograph over here is called a bayi. Now, in the middle bottom end of the photograph over here, you can actually see an elephant standing in the middle over here. And what the bayi is saline percolations of salty water that come to the surface. Now salt in the forest acts like sugar and water does in Kalahari desert systems or in other systems as well. The animals are attracted to it from far and wide. Animals crave salt, and they do everything in their power to get to that salt. So this is a wonderful melting pot where you can actually see forest buffalo interacting with forest elephants, interacting with gorilla, chimpanzee, another 12 different species of primates that we get in the area, and a variety of other herbivorous animals that are able to be seen as well. And this is what really amazed me about this place. It's if you have been to Africa before, and you have been to Southern Africa or South Africa, or you've also been to East Africa, it is advisable that you forget everything that you have learned and actually start learning again, because everything that you see here is completely new. Different kind of forests, and we explore this area by a lot of nature walks. We do nature drives. We also go out by canoe and go kayaking. We walk on ancient elephant trails over here. This is one of those ancient elephant trails. This is what the marshland forest looks like from the air, totally different kind of forest. These trees are all called the wapaka tree. They're actually the closest relative of the baobab tree in southern Africa. And you can see how big some of these trees are. They're just absolutely massive, and they tower above you. Riverine experiences are also part of this, so we go out by boat. We also go out by kayaks like this on afternoon experiences on the Lekoli stream, which is a tributary of the Congo River. This is grassland habitat as well. And then you also get savanna habitat with massive termite mounds in it as well. So it really does have an amazing diversity of habitat, which then translates into great wildlife. So we had pretty incredible sightings. This is a sighting of a matriarchal herd of forest elephant that were moving across this river. You know, the lovely thing about this kind of photograph is that you are looking at a very strange, surreal picture, especially if you come from a desert environment like where I do, where elephants are in control of the ecosystem. Here, the elephants are unable to even dent the ecosystem with how much they eat because there is just so much vegetation. Look at that photograph over there, and the elephant is dwarfed by the vegetation. Wonderful to watch. These elephants and all other wildlife in this area are always fit, fat, and flourishing. These are forest buffalo. You see how different they look. They're red in color. They've got much smaller horns. They've got very little ears. They're about, I'd say, about 15% to 20% smaller than the Cape buffalo, which is what we get in southern and East Africa. But they are bulk grazers, so you do get to see them in quite large herds. This little beautiful critter over here is called an Agile Mangabey, and he's a very fast primate, very small little primate as well. And it just goes to show how many different species there are of these primates up in this area. This over here is the Colorburst monkey. There's another photograph over there getting a little bit closer to the Colorburst monkey. And where you find one monkey, you generally find others. So we had two amazing sightings of chimpanzee. The one family of chimpanzee we watched for about 45 minutes, just feeding on a tree, interacting with each other, family life. And then not far from there, we had 6 other species of primates all hanging around together. Believe it or not, this area has got 3 species of crocodile. It has the Nile crocodile, which you see in southern and East Africa, slender snouted crocodile, and then it also has got the dwarf crocodile as well. This hairy little fellow over here is actually called a grey-cheeked Mangabey. You can see the grey coloration there on the cheek. It's just another example of a different primate that we get in the area. There is also an incredible little bush baby who is no bigger than your hand, but he has this incredibly long prehensile finger, and his name is the elegant needle-clawed Galago. Beautiful little creature to see. And sometimes you bump into wild gorilla as well. And these are actually quite wonderful to see because it's just so great to be able to see other animals moving in the area. There are 12,000 western lowland gorillas in this national park. This over here is a bushbuck. The top predator, the most common top predator, is the spotted hyena. We actually watched 8 spotted hyenas hunting forest buffalo on one night by game drive. They didn't get the hyena, they didn't get the buffalo, but it was still fascinating to watch nevertheless. And then amazing other wildlife as well. I just tried to put a few more images in here. This is a lepidopterist's dream. There are hundreds of species of butterfly. This is just one species up in the top left. On the top right is an enormous pig called the Giant Forest Hog. He is a very big pig, a very large pig. It's around about 3 or 4 times the size of a warthog. The photograph down below, which is a little bit out of focus, I apologize for that, is called a bongo. That is a relative of the kudu antelope and a very shy, reclusive, rare antelope that is becoming very habituated to us in Uganda, and we're seeing them quite frequently now. And then there's a different type of praying mantis on the left. Just a couple more butterflies to whet your appetite. You can spend an entire day just photographing butterflies in this area. They do something called mud puddling, and if you just pour water onto a piece of soil and you lie down on the ground and you just wait, you will have 5 or 10 species sitting there within 5 to 10 minutes. It's also, anybody who's interested in amphibians, it's a dream for them as well. There are literally hundreds of different species of frogs in this rainforest. If you're a birder, this is a birding paradise, because while you understand the families, and this is a turako or a hornbill for those who've been in southern and east Africa, it actually is known as the great blue turako up in this area, and it has an enormous wingspan, and there's a whole range of these different species up there. These are green pigeons. They congregate in flocks of thousands upon thousands. This is what one of them would look like up just a little bit more closely, and it's just one species that I chose to put in for you just to show how diverse and productive this area actually is. We get grey parrots, which you find in pet stores throughout the North American pet shops. You get them here in flocks of thousands. Sometimes the sky sometimes goes grey. And some incredibly large, big tuskers are possible to be seen as well. And so I think that all that remains is for you to come and visit this unique part of Africa. We see this as an incredible conservation project. We see it as critically important to our footprint in Africa. And we also hope that we are able to expand upon our initial tourism investment here so that we can actually help to conserve these incredible wilderness areas for future generations, as well as the people of the Republic of Congo, at the same time as delivering what I believe is a totally life-changing experience. And therewith ends the presentation.
Well, Kim, thank you so much. And I would like to move into question and answer now. We have some good questions here. Before I start with those, I'd like to invite anyone else listening who may not have submitted a question yet to go ahead and do that. You will need to open the control panel on the right by clicking on the orange button that you see in the upper right-hand corner. And once you do, you'll see the question box there. So we have this question that came in early on. It says, do we need gardening gloves and gaiters like we used in Uganda?
I would recommend that when it comes to Lango Camp, which is the forest safari, the more adventurous you are, the better the experience, because you need to allow the forest to come to you as well as you going to it. And so you need to be able to try and do a little bit of walking, because we try to go to a number of these different saline clearings, because that's where you have a number of the different species coming out, and you never know what happens with the animal movements, because you don't know if a tree is in fruit here or if the saline bi is stronger in one area over another for whatever reason at a certain time of the year. So the two things that I would recommend most specifically for the Lango area is shoes that can easily have water drain out of them, and secondly, that you do bring gaiters. Gaiters that go about as high as your knee or just around your calf muscle, simply because there are in certain areas little bushes that have got little burrs on them. But what I did is with my gaiters, I wore them for the first half an hour of the walk from camp and the last half an hour of walk back into camp, and outside of that it was 100% fine, and I took the gaiters off. In terms of gardening gloves, no need for gardening gloves whatsoever.
Okay, good. And there are questions here about the accommodations. It says, we saw the first camp's accommodations, but not the second. Are they similar?
The rooms are exactly the same. Sorry, I forgot to say that. The rooms look exactly the same on the interiors. The only difference really is the main areas. And the difference on the main areas is that at Lango Camp they are separate, with a bar and lounge area separated from the dining room area. But at Ngaga it is one contiguous main area which would flow from the lounge area into the bar and the dining room.
Okay. And several people are interested to know what the best time of year would be to travel there.
So natural habitat are fastidious in terms of planning the very best times with the very best itineraries for their guests when they're traveling. And natural habitat's departures are operating between August and the end of September. I would say that I traveled from the 16th to the 26th of October, and it was just as we were moving back into the rainy season again. The seasonality flows according to the holiday peak from North America, most wonderfully in our favor, that is. And the dry season runs from around about May through to the end of September and into early October. But when I talk about dry season, you still get the odd shower for half an hour once every second day or once every third day. So much like Uganda and Rwanda, you must have an expectation that you're going to get the odd drop of water on your head. It is, after all, a tropical rainforest.
Okay. Well, there are other questions and concerns about mosquitoes and other bugs, and wondering if there is a time of year when the bugs are worse than at other times.
Well, let me try and put it across to you in this way. I did a canoeing trip on the St. Croix River in Minnesota earlier this year. And I can assure you that I have never been bitten by more mosquitoes in my life than anywhere in Africa. And the one beautiful thing about the Republic of Congo and working in a pristine rainforest system like this is quite simply that there are as many predators as there are mosquitoes. And so if I was bitten maybe twice in the duration of a week, it would be a lot. The only bugs that really did bother me was a tiny little thing called a sweat bee. Now, a sweat bee is a stingless flying bee. It does not have a stinger on it like a honeybee that can cause pain, and it is unable to do anything to you. But they just wake up at around about 9 o'clock in the morning in the Ngaga area. And when you're watching gorillas, if you arrive at the gorillas late, then they have a great love of salt. And because you would be perspiring, they do have a propensity to try and get in your ears. So what we do is we encourage guests to bring a little bit of a head net. And if you do get bothered in certain spots where you stop and watch the gorilla, then you just wear the head net for a few minutes or half an hour or so. And then the second you start walking again, or you move to another location, you take the head net off it, and they generally don't bother you. So that was the only irritation in terms of insects. Other than that, there was not one insect that caused a problem.
Okay, great. So a couple of requests here to find out whether, about some very specific wildlife. There was a question about whether one might see the okapi, and also what about bonobos?
Oh, two very good questions. Unfortunately, I do not think that we have sighted an okapi at all in this area. I'm not even 100% sure if the range extends into this area, but I'm pretty certain in saying that they do not exist in that area. In terms of the bonobo, unfortunately, the bonobo are not located anywhere in this area at all. The bonobo are only found in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And unfortunately, we would not stand by an experience right now to go across and see them. I have heard of people that have ventured across there and have been able to see the bonobos, but in terms of a viable tourism experience, I'd be very cautious to try that.
Okay. No, thank you. So we have a couple of very serious photographers listening in today, and
yes.
One was interested to know what sort of lens you might recommend, and the other was interested about ISO and shutter speed that you're using on some of this photography. So could you talk for a few moments about some photography?
Yeah, sure. No problem. So I still use a pretty old camera. It's a Nikon D70 body, and I use an f5.6 70 to 300 mm lens. The D70 on the Nikon, in terms of ISO, gets up to a maximum of 1600, and I found that perfectly adequate for utilization within the forest. I think that if you have a more modern camera body, which does go up to 3200 or higher, that you'd have absolutely no problem whatsoever. And the light conditions were actually quite good. You know, the thing about this forest is, while you think that there's not going to be any light streaming down into the bottom, there actually is quite a lot of light, and there's little clearings here and there all over the show. You know, I was shooting at if I was shooting at 1200 ISO, which is where I'd say I would mostly have been, I would say that my shutter speed was in the order of around about 350 odd, so it was fast enough to handhold.
Okay, that's terrific. Thank you. Another good question here. How does one spend the evenings? Are there any early evening wildlife activities, or does the day end back at camp?
No, there's some wonderful activities. At Lago Camp, remember that was the camp that I was talking about being the forest safari. Lovely thing about that area is that we are able to do nature drives there out into that savanna habitat and environment. And we do use those land cruisers as game viewing vehicles there. And so we do night drives there, which is actually fantastic. And then something we started this year at Ngaga Camp is we do forest walks at night, which is phenomenal, because that's where you pick up this elegant needle-clawed galago, as well as a whole bunch of other nocturnal species like tree civet, for example, giant pangolin, forest badger, and a whole range of other species that you could glimpse.
Okay. What about accommodations for single travelers?
So each of the camps have got a maximum of 6 rooms, and we have no restriction on single travelers at all. There is a single supplement on the travel, and the reason for the single supplement is mainly surrounding the cost of air access getting in and out of this area. It's an incredibly, unfortunately, Congo is a very expensive country to operate in. You know, the price of a can of Coca-Cola is in the order of $7 to $8 US. So when it comes to charter flying, flying is very expensive as well. So we sub-charter an aircraft, and we need to try and get as many guests on that aircraft as possible. So if we have got a single guest, we do need to have a slight compensation measure on the flying. And then there's also a small single supplement at the camps themselves as well. But it's not restrictive in any way.
Okay. There are questions here about personal safety, given the political situation in the Congo? Anything that would be cause for concern?
I think that it's very important to clarify the situation here. We're talking about the Republic of Congo, and it very unfortunately shares a name with the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is the big Congo, which is where all of the problems are happening. The Republic of Congo is a multi-party democracy and has been 100% stable since 1992. In fact, it was stable before then. It just wasn't under the bicameral multi-party democratic government that it is today. Where we are located is in the very west of the Republic of Congo, which is in the order of about 350 odd miles away from the Democratic Republic of Congo border. And where we are located has an incredibly low population density of people, and there's absolutely no civil unrest whatsoever.
That's good to know. That is important, an important distinction. Thank you for clearing that up for us. So, question about snakes. Are there snakes everywhere?
No, I'm a great lover of snakes, and there are a whole bunch of snakes in this area. You travel anywhere in southern Africa or East Africa, and there are many species. And we did not see one snake at all in the 7 days that we were there. Both of my colleagues, who are in the office outside the front of mine, have also been up to the Congo, and one in particular is a reptile fundi, and he was also unable to locate any snake. But if you are a lover of snakes, there is one very rare snake or very seldomly seen snake. I think it's quite common, but very seldomly seen snake called the Gaboon Viper, and that is in that area, but we've never had a sighting of the thing yet. So I hate to say it, but I think we may disappoint from the snake front.
Okay. So would this trip work for a family group of 5, 4 adults, and 1 child who is 11? So maybe you could talk about family travel?
Unfortunately, when it comes to viewing the gorillas, the minimum age is 16 years of age. And the reason for that is rooted in not knowing how the gorilla are going to react to children, and it is also an IUCN regulation to which we need to adhere.
Okay. Well, that's important information, and good that we were able to talk about that. So there was a question. You talked about a gorilla researcher, and we have Anne with us, who's traveled with Natural Habitat Adventures before and is looking forward to going back. And she's wondering if you could give us the name of the gorilla researcher again so that she can look up and get more information.
Her first name is Magda, M-A-G-D-A. I cannot remember her surname, and unfortunately, I'm just looking around my office while I'm talking. I don't think I'm going to be able to locate it. But what I will do is I will share the information with Megan, and if you could share your email address with Megan, then she'll be more than happy to hand over that information to you. I'm sorry, I don't have that at my fingertips.
Oh, no worries. We know how to get in touch with her, and we can get that information to her. So that's great. All right. What about reading lists? I know that is something I believe that Natural Habitat Adventures sends out prior to any trip. Is there another place that one could go to read up a little bit before going on this journey?
Well, Natural Habitat and Wilderness Safaris work very closely with each other in regards to the compilation of the reading list itself. The only real advice that I can give you is that if you do come, then do bring your own birding book and perhaps your own mammal book as well, which you familiarize yourself with before you get there, because often the sightings are reasonably quick, and unless you're razor sharp with your camera and can lift it up and shoot a few photographs quickly, you might miss the actual sighting itself, and it comes down to birding more so than mammal viewing itself. But regardless, I do think it is a wonderful thing to have a couple of your own books. Another fascinating book that I did read, which has absolutely nothing to do with the Republic of Congo, but the Democratic Republic of Congo next door, is a book called King Leopold's, what is it, King Leopold's Diary, or King Leopold's Journal. And it's basically about the Belgian King Leopold and his horrendous reign in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But what was very fascinating to me was there was a very, very well-described tribal structure to the indigenous people of that area, and it did give a really nice introduction to the tribes of the country and the region itself. So I thought that was wonderful pre-reading before I got up there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Thank you. This shot that's on the screen right now, someone is asking us whether how close the photographer was.
These kind of photographs over here are sometimes taken at quite close quarters. Depends on how relaxed these animals are. You generally find that when it comes to big old boys like these two characters, that they've pretty much been there, done that, seen it, and got the T-shirts, and so they generally are more relaxed than what the females would be with the young. I'd say that we didn't get within 300 feet of the females, and when we did encounter the one big male Ellie that we did see when I was on the trip, I would say that we got to within about 150 feet of him, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're getting much closer to these animals now. We're in the 3rd year of operation there, so it takes 2 to 3 years for animals to get habituated to an area and to know that you're not actually there to harm them, and then they slowly but surely start to relax.
Great, thank you. And we're almost done. We've just got a few more questions here. There's a question about the gorilla researchers, whether they are always on site.
Yes, they are always on site.
Great. And what about vaccinations? Are vaccinations required?
Yes, certain vaccinations are required. The vaccination that you do have to have is the yellow fever certification. But I would also recommend that you do contact your local Center for Disease Control, your CDC, and see what they would have to say about vaccinations. I'm of the belief that the more vaccinations you have, the better. So I did cholera, I did typhoid, I did hepatitis. I made sure that my rabies was up to date, my tetanus was up to date, but yeah, as I said, you absolutely needed nothing other than the yellow fever, and I completely overreacted. And our footprint there, while it is remote, is actually surprisingly well appointed.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. This is our last question. How close do you get to the gorillas?
So it's an important question, and the first thing that I would like to do is to rather discuss this in the context of what is currently happening with mountain gorilla on the other side of Africa, Uganda, Rwanda. And what I'd first like to say is that these gorilla in Uganda and Rwanda, the mountain gorilla itself, have been viewed for many years, whereas the western lowland gorilla have been viewed for 3 or 4 years, or at most 5 years. And basically, they still have a little bit of a caution to them, and so they generally don't allow themselves to come closer to you than 20 feet. But that still is very, very close. And sometimes, the big male will come right up next to you. But more often than not, they like to maintain a natural little distance from you. So I would say at the closest, on average, 20 feet. But I would say that our sightings were in the order of about 30 feet to 35 feet away.
Okay, great. Well, Kim, thank you so much. This has been just fascinating, and we have a lot of folks listening who are pretty excited about what you've shared today. So I'm going to turn it back over to you now for anything else you might want to say before we close.
I think the only thing to really end it off with is I went there with an open mind. And if you go with an open mind and you let the forest come to you, and you realize the incredible wilderness that you are bearing witness to in this area, that you'll walk away with an incredibly fulfilling safari filled with memories and animals and experiences which are impossible to replicate on any other journey that I have ever been on. And it was something that humbled me and something that blew me away at the same time.
We want to thank all of you for listening today, and be sure to be in touch with Natural Habitat Adventures if you have any other questions. And any question we were not able to answer on the air today, we will follow up with through a personal email. So we appreciate all of you taking the time to be with us, and with that, we will say good day and conclude our webinar. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim.